All right. So today, our primary topic is moment-to-moment decision making with some decision analysis and tactic selection. So as we talk about assessment overall and graphing and different ways of different ways of looking at um, information that is coming in and what we can do about them, do about it overall. It's super important that we understand what types of decisions we can make and information that we can decide upon while teaching, while in the moment, how we can use real time information as assessment to make meaningful decisions for our learners. So, we have some different contexts here or environments that we are working in here. We have self-contained, we have classroom, we have clinic, we have diagnosticians, we have a lot going on. So what a moment to moment or within moment decision looks like is going to be different for each of you or for many of you in many different ways, but the concept still applies. All right. So let's start off by talking about different types of assessment or information that we get from students throughout the day. Instruction or during instruction, during a traditional, less so during a traditional assessment, more during instructional periods. What information do we get that we can use as an evaluative tool? That question makes sense?
Just through the lesson, like
Yeah.
kids answering and participating.
Okay, good. So I'm going to key in on one piece of that, and participation. Let's start right there, right? So participation is an awesome piece of data. Forget correct and incorrect. But and Selena, yeah, absolutely. So how many are participating? That is a huge informational tool and feedback that we get as to what we are doing right, what we are doing wrong, what we need to keep doing, what we need to change. Good. Participation. What else? And then I'll give you the easy one: correct and incorrect responses. Right. So let's get that one out of the way. What else? What type of information do we get? Types of questions we ask and types of responses we get. Good. So I hadn't even thought about that, or I wasn't really going to focus on that. But the types of responses that we get back in order to evaluate are limited by the types of questions we ask. We know that not all knowledge is the same. We know that not all behaviors are the same. If I ask for a written response, I'm going to get a written response that is not necessarily the same as a vocal response or a project-based response or some other type of response. So the types of questions we ask defines the types of responses we get and what we can do with that information. Selena, I don't know if that was what you were implying, but that's how I interpret it, and I like that.
That's some too. And like if we ask a student to explain a topic in detail and they can or cannot, I think that would help to make a moment decision. If one can't explain or if a lot can't explain and that was the goal of our lesson and they can't do that, then we would have to adjust.
And what I like about that, I was just speaking about this today. When we ask rich types of questions, we allow for a range of responses, right? We don't get a lot of information from asking what's 2 plus 2. We might get a little bit more information if we ask why is 2 plus 2 equals, why does 2 plus 2 equals 4, right? We might get more information if we say explain addition. So the type of question we ask opens the window to how much information we can get back. On any type of assessment, whether it be a traditional test, whether it be a true pre-test, post-test type assessment where we're using that information, whether it be instructional, the two worst scores a student can receive for us informationally are 0 and 100, right? If the student gets a 0, I don't know what they don't know. I have yet to find the bound of what they don't know. If they get 100, then I have yet to find the bound of what they do know. And I don't know how much higher that goes. So series of questions, or these rich questions that open up multiple types of responses, are hugely valuable to us, or can be valuable to us as assessment information in the moment. Awesome. What else? What about thinking out of the box, away from academics? What type of information can we get, do we get in the moment?
I think that we can see behavior, or observe behaviors that are, students may come in feeling tired. Maybe they've had medication recently that's affecting whether they can really grasp or focus or pay attention.
What word are we going to use to define that? That's absolutely correct. What words are we going to use? It's two word phrase.
Setting event.
Setting events. Awesome. So we can identify setting events. We can assess instructional readiness via setting events. Related to that, we can assess motivation, right? What I hope you guys are starting to see or put together here is that the information that we get, that we are going to use to make, or that we can get to use to make moment-to-moment decisions, is our learn unit in context. We are able to evaluate things we ask relative to student behaviors, antecedents and behaviors, the effectiveness of consequences, motivation, setting events, prerequisite skills. We can assess all of these different things during our instructional period. And we want to be able to have all of this information available to us in order to make sound moment-to-moment decisions. And that's what this is all really about, right? Teachers make hundreds of assessment decisions or data-based, information-based decisions in a day. What to teach next, when to go on, how to group these students, how to do I need to repeat this material? What kind of corrections should I give? What kind of feedback should I give? All of these are decisions that are made on the fly. The challenge for teachers is to be able to use the information that is coming to them to make sound moment-to-moment decisions. That is our big challenge. So what do we mean, first of all, by moment-to-moment decisions? What is a moment? When is an opportunity for decision? How do we know as teachers when to use those data that are coming to us, or that information that is coming to us, to make a decision? And it's different for each of you, right? When do we make decisions? What are some opportunities to make decisions? Let's put it that way.
Oh, well, I guess from my own experience, I base it on the kind of momentum that's occurring in the classroom, and also what feedback am I receiving from the student.
Good.
I base my decision on the students learning or not. So for example, through the year, I've recommended to some teachers when students who exhibit severe behaviors in a classroom, and maybe the teacher doesn't understand, but the student had a medication situation. So placing demands on the student caused greater behavior. So in the moment, you would lessen the demands on the student, but maybe 10 minutes later, you could come back around and place that demand on the student.
Amp it back up. Good. So the occurrence of a behavior is a possible decision opportunity. That's how I would view that, right? So when you, in the moment, when you have a maladaptive behavior, that is an opportunity to make a decision about what to do, right? Good. What other opportunities are there for decisions in the moment? Or what else defines a moment where a decision can be made?
What I was thinking about was like kind of more so in a classroom setting. So say that you provided a couple different learn units orally to the class, and then you find that like if you have like white boards or something, and that's how they answer, and you see a lot more incorrect responses, you could probably lump up the kids that do know the answers or are doing quite well with the lesson, put them together, and then section off the kids that are having a little bit more troubles and focus more so on them and really getting those concepts together and kind of developing, and then maybe give the kids that are having a little bit, that are doing well anyways, give them more independent work that they can work on.
Awesome. So you have this mid-instructional behavior, right? Or instructional behaviors that are now occurring that you can make those decisions. So within in the middle of the instruction, we can stop and make decisions. Good. When else?
I think a big one in the regular class is exit tickets. Like we use at the end of the lesson, the exit tickets to say, okay, what do we need to work on in small group tomorrow with which students? So going back off of like the whiteboard responses too.
Awesome. Excellent. So keep that in mind, keep those in mind. What about in a clinical setting? When do we make decisions?
Decisions are primarily made based off of the graphs, based off of the if it's an academic task, for example, based off of what has been graphed. For example, 3 data path, 5 data path. I mean, you can make decisions then using.
Excellent. And what I want you to be hearing, the similarity in each of those. So in Allison's case, we have this exit ticket data point. Rianne, I'm going to modify yours a tiny bit and say after a pattern of response board responding, right? In Isaac's situation or example, after a number of data points. And in Cece's example of the occurrence of the behavior, that's kind of the one that sticks to me, because that's the one where we want the decision to be as data-based as possible, but is so often not, right? Behavior, what do I do, right? But we need plans, we need data, we need to make sure that we are doing the right thing at the right time. That idea of the data-based decision in the moment needs to hold true. We are very comfortable with data-based decisions when it comes to RTI teams, to placement, to evaluation, to assessment. We're very comfortable when we can sit and digest the data and nothing's really changing around us and make a decision based off of that. We can decide what programs to implement. We can decide what classroom to put them in. We can decide what goals to work on. We can decide entire educational careers around these larger pieces of data. But what we have to make sure we hold true to is that when we have these opportunities for decisions in the moment, that we ensure that the data supports, one, the need for a decision, and two, the actual decision that it is that we are going to make. So in these different scenarios or in these different environments that we have, we have decision protocol, we have a AIL or group decision protocol, we have some behavioral decision protocols. Ensuring that all teachers or everyone that is working with students is comfortable with some sort of decision opportunity allows us at least the starting point for making sound moment to moment decisions. If I say, all right, here's my question for the class, everyone responds, okay, you 5 got it right, go over here. You 4 got it wrong, go over here. And then I'm going to practice. Then we come back. All right, I ask my next question. And then, all right, you 8 got it right, go over there. You 4 got it wrong, go over here. Those aren't decision opportunities because there's no pattern of behavior. There's no relationship between student responding and outcomes, right? I'm just kind of on a whim deciding when to do something. I'm not letting any particular intervention or instruction or learning opportunities occur over time. Behaviorally, same thing. If I have a behavior plan in place, so Cece, let's say that you've already told the teachers what to do, right? And the behavior occurs again, and they said, well, we did the thing, but he still behaved, so it didn't work. Well, no, I told you the thing. That doesn't mean you did the thing, right? Go do the thing, and then do it again, and then do it again and again, and then we'll talk. After 5 days, after 3 days, after 3 ascending data paths of average duration of the behavior, whatever it's going to be. There has to be this value to the concept of the decision opportunity. There has to be some understanding of what that decision opportunity is. Otherwise, when we make decisions in the moment, they're not attached to meaningful data. All right. So in each situation, it's the easiest of those situations is the clinical setting or potentially the self-contained setting, right? Where education or progress moves a little bit slower, where we understand that repetition is part of the intervention. When we can say 5 data paths across 20 learn unit opportunities, so 100 or 120 learn units before a decision is really going to be made, we can digest that a little bit. That's much more akin to a larger scale assessment where the kid leaves and I can breathe and I can say, okay, what am I going to do tomorrow? The type of decision I make is different, but the opportunity to make the decision has a little bit less pressure. In the general education classroom, in the behavioral classroom, those decisions and being able to make those decisions actually on the fly are going to determine the effectiveness of your instruction for the day, for the week, right? So we need to make sure that we are neither missing opportunities, nor are we shooting ourselves in the foot with making opportunities before they need to actually be made. All right. So all that being said, and this is going to be a very open-ended type of question, what are the types of decisions that can and should versus can't and should not be made in the moment? Is there a limit to the types of decisions we should make? What do you guys think? I'll give you a obvious example. In a moment, based on a singular moment-to-moment decision or within moment decision, should we make a decision on educational placement?
No.
No, right? So there, just based on that far end example, there is a bound to the types of decisions we should be making in the moment. All right. Should we be making decisions every moment? I already went on that. No, we should not. So there is a lower bound to the types of decisions we should make. So what are some of the types of decisions we should make within the moment? What do you guys think?
One thing that I can think of, like in the behavioral clinic one, is like, for instance, if I have a kiddo that's emitting some kind of stereotypy, that kind of cues me to be like, okay, whatever is going on in his environment is not reinforcing enough, or it's too reinforcing. So I need to jump in and find something new for them to play with and then reinforce that appropriate behavior.
Okay, good, good.
Yeah.
What else?
I think it's for me, when I see an increase or an escalation in a target behavior, it's an indication to me to, I guess that can be either way, to continue or not in my decision analysis in the moment.
Okay, good. What else? What about instructionally? We talked about what to do, after an exit ticket, after a number of correct or incorrect responses in a row. What types of decisions do we make based off of that?
Lesson plans.
Okay, good. Continue the lesson, change the lesson. What's the pattern here?
That we need data to make decisions.
That's one of them. Yeah. Whose behavior is changing in these decisions?
Ours.
Teacher.
Ours, the teacher. In a moment-to-moment decision, the only behavior you can change is your own, right? The data that you are getting in a moment-to-moment decision is that what you are doing either is or is not, kind of black or white, functionally related to the behavior that you want to see from your child. If it is functionally related, continue. If it's not, change. So often in the moment, I don't know if that's a fair statement. In the moment, many teachers will make decisions to change the environment, remove the student, deal with something later, right? Those are not what we're doing in those situations. Is we're losing teaching opportunities. We're losing ways for us to learn, for the student to learn. And we're kind of neutering the ability for that growth in the moment, or the effectiveness of that moment-to-moment decision. The more tools we have as teachers, the more in tune we are with with these individuals, the easier it is for us to pivot our own behavior to meet the needs of that student. All right. The value of, so with that, I'm trying to place moment-to-moment decisions in the context of the larger decision-making and assessment process. How do these moment-to-moment decisions stack up to impact where we end up with students? What is the value of moment-to-moment decisions, I guess is what I'm asking.
Hopefully higher rates of acquisition.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So by making moment-to-moment decisions, what we're doing, so the exit ticket is actually a great starting point for a minimal or maybe maximal temporal point for decision making. End of the day, right? In a general ed classroom. If I am going to make, I tell myself as a teacher, I am going to collect a data point at the end of the day so I can make my decisions for instruction tomorrow, right? That's kind of the last point, the latest point that we want to go before making a decision, right? If we miss that point, then we're continuing on with instruction without ensuring that acquisition of material is occurring. The shorter the time span to a meaningful point that we can I don't know if that syntax was correct. The more often we can make those decisions, the more sure we are going to be that that acquisition is occurring. All right, and I'll come back to that in a second. No, I'll go to it now. Why does that level of knowledge of acquisition matter? Start thinking in terms of bigger educational context, clinical or educational context of assessment. Why do we want that immediacy? Why is a day the longest we want to go? Or 5 data paths? I'll equivocate that to a day. Go ahead, Allison.
So that we don't wait too long and the kid's not getting anything, that we can intervene as soon as possible.
Absolutely. So the hallmark here in behavior analytic assessment is that we are operating under a paradigm of mastery. Okay, so we want, throughout everything, we want to ensure that children have mastered whatever it is that we are teaching them. If I have the data to show that a child is not mastering something, and I do not make an educational decision, that is obviously a missed opportunity. That's clear. But I know I'm marching towards this larger assessment, whether it's a unit test or an authorization period or an IEP or whatever it may be, that is not going to show the progress that I would like to see, or I expect to see, or that I know my child is capable of, right? So these decision opportunities are what kind of keep us on track. The decisions that we make are what allow us to meet those goals. The other way to look at it is every time we deliver an instructional antecedent, we have a decision opportunity. That even with an incorrect response, we don't always need to change what we do whole scale, but we have to decide whether to provide reinforcement or provide a correction, right? The larger, and that's really an effect on student behavior. That mid-level, that moment-to-moment decision where we change our behavior, we're driving the car, right? That's going to be what keeps us in our lane. If we can get, if we have to make multiple decision opportunities or arrive at multiple decision opportunities and have to swerve a couple of times, each swerve kind of being a tactic or a change in instructional strategy that we are implementing, is that feedback for us that we can use? Is that I wasn't even going there, but are those the number of tactics? Are the number of different ways that we have to change our instruction? Is that feedback that or assessment that we can use to help inform us? Absolutely, right? I keep putting in this type of tactic and it keeps not working. Why does that tactic not work? Can I make a larger decision related to that? Yeah, absolutely. So the more that we can give ourselves appropriate data-based opportunities to keep the car in the lane, the less we have to rely on the bigger pieces of assessment. If I have data here, 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 and here to show that the child has mastered these skills and they needed these tactics to get there, and I behaved in these ways in order to get them there, I'll give them the post test, I'll give them the unit test, but I know where we are, is here's the data to support it, right? So I've bought myself not just educational time, but I've bought myself, the word I want to say is like emotional time in the knowledge of where my student is, right? Because of these decisions that I've been able to make along the way. I just had the part of the conversation that we had at Max today had to do with lesson planning. And the teachers were griping, for lack of a better word, over their lesson planning because the lesson plan never had any relation to what they actually did in the classroom. They wrote down all the things that they were going to do, and then they step in the classroom and they say one thing and everything fell off the track, right? Their issue was that their lesson plans did not allow, or they believed that it did not allow, for moment-to-moment decision making. They were going to start the day, and the train was going to get there at the end of the day, and they had to just hold on and hope everyone came along with them. They didn't have the ability to keep everyone in those lanes. When teachers do not have the opportunity to make education or to make those moment-to-moment decisions, children are not going to progress through curricula in efficient ways. You have to wait for the assessment. You have to use the assessment as your data point to go back and intervene. As Allison was alluding to, that might be a month later or worse, right? So we need to make sure that these moment-to-moment decisions happen at appropriate times in meaningful ways. Okay, so the types of our behaviors that we can change, again, we want to be thinking about the learn unit in context. We can change antecedents. We can change consequences in the moment. We can change motivation or attempt to affect motivation in the moment. We can rearrange the environment to address setting events. The AC goes out, we can move into another room. We can kick the AC on. We can decrease our response frequency. We can give people breaks. We can do lots of things to mitigate setting events. If a child is missing a prerequisite, we can stop our instruction and teach that prerequisite skill. These are all things that we can mitigate in the moment that might allow us to very quickly get back on track. Isaac mentioned the concept of the decision protocol. I want to talk about that for a little bit in clinical settings and this idea of these longer spans between decisions. That might not always be the best decision-making protocol for all types of decisions. What are some decisions that should not, want to choose my words carefully here. What are some types of decisions that should not wait for pre-established decision points, but should still be data-based? What types of decisions might those be? I'm not sure that question made sense.
So Dr. Shaman, do you mean like the reinforcement, like positive reinforcement, the quickness of positive reinforcement?
Specifically, that what I was thinking of was the types of reinforcers, right? So if you have, very, very obviously, if you have a reinforcer that is not functioning as a reinforcer in the moment, don't wait until a decision point for the data to tank to change that reinforcer, right? There are smaller decisions that have to be made in this moment, like right here, right now, this data point, in order to ensure that the decision points that we do get to have validity, right? How many of you have seen graphs that go like this? I have, for sure. I've been a part of those graphs, right? When that happens, even if I'm using a decision protocol, I get to a decision point, I have no idea what to do. I've lost the ability to make a sound decision despite being at a decision point, because my singular data points have lost validity. So I need to make sure that going into a decision opportunity, that I've done what I need to do so that I can do something with those data. All right. At a higher level, what does that look like? Well, if I get to a unit test, if I get to an evaluation period or an authorization period, and I don't have validity data to show that what I was trying to do to intervene, to change behaviors, to teach skills was done with validity, my assessment is going to give me something, but it's not going to be meaningful. My teacher didn't implement the curriculum correctly. My student doesn't score well on this test. Do we make a decision based off of that? No, right? So I have to ensure, I as an assessor, I as a teacher, I as a BCBA, as a clinician, have to ensure that the data being poured into my moment-to-moment decisions, the moment-to-moment decisions that are being poured into my assessment, my long-term assessment data, all have validity so that, again, I can make sound decisions. Does that all make sense? Am I getting somewhere here? Okay, good. I'm really fried, guys. I apologize. I'm so tired. So when we are thinking of moment-to-moment decisions in our class, first of all, let me ask this. How many of you comfortably say that in a session, during a day, in your classroom, you sit down and the decisions that need to be made and when they need to be made, where does that sit in your thought process? Is it primary? Is it secondary? Are you not thinking about it at all? What is your guys, as teachers, as clinicians, what is your individual relationship with the moment-to-moment decision-making process? It's kind of a loaded question, but go ahead.
I would say it's primary because my decisions are what affects our complete session. Like if I don't change my behavior and figure out what's going on with my learner, then we're going to continue to hit this problem and it's going to be a long day.
Awesome. So in a clinical setting, when you say it's primary, how does that start? What does that process start with for you?
Just kind of observing the kids' behavior first.
Okay.
And they kind of, because if I see a couple, like for instance, I have a learner who gets kind of tired at a certain time of day. And so I start looking for those precursor behaviors, things that I've seen numerous times that kind of, this is the start of the chain. And so that cues me like, okay, I need to start moving. I need to start finding things. I need to get them more interactive. I need them to start moving around. That way I don't hit this roadblock of fatigue where, I'm going to have tantrum behaviors because I've seen it before. So I just kind of look for those precursors.
Are those precursors or how to respond to those behaviors defined anywhere?
Like in a plan?
Yeah.
No.
No. All right. So it's taking a step back in terms of validity. What happens if you're out?
It would be rough for the next girl.
Uh-huh. Right.
But during training, I always tell them, but it's not explicitly put into into text.
So that might be something that needs to be considered. And I don't want to imply that every single little behavior needs to be planned out. There is a lot of what should be good behavior analytic observation behaviors that govern that type of responding. But if that is, that becomes predictable and really becomes treatable, then that might be something to look at for a plan so that you have that consistency and that validity. If you think that if I'm making moment-to-moment decisions about how to change this program based on current behavior, that needs to be explained somewhere. Selena, I'm thinking for schools, like there are so many times when someone interacts with a child that doesn't know what to do, right? Or just how many times have you had a behavior problem kid and who's crying in the halls and someone comes by and says, "Oh, what's wrong, little Johnny?" And you're like, no, don't do that, right? Those types of things really, really matter, right? What is there something that you're thinking of in particular?
Yeah, like when you asked her what happens when you're out, I think something that, at least in the public school, that is struggled with a lot, like a balance between what they'll define as good teaching, like one school year, and then what should be defined, okay, well, maybe this should be like an accommodation that the child should get all the time. Because like people will say, oh, well, that's just good teaching, so I do that. But then it's like, well, what's good teaching to you might not be good teaching practices to the teacher next year. And it's a lot of things, like thinking back what you said about the teachers at Max Charter School, how they find their lesson plan, that they're frustrated with it. I know when I first started teaching, I felt that half of the stuff we had to put on the lesson plan, I'm gonna be honest, I thought half of it was stupid. So, but now it's like, okay, well, I wish I could have learned more of these things when I first started teaching, because I'm a very different person now than what I was back then. And I guess that happens over everybody's educational career. So, and then sometimes, like adjusting instruction in the moment, sometimes people don't realize that what they're asking students to do is a skill that they haven't been taught yet. And if as a teacher you don't realize that, then you can waste time and be frustrated and damage the relationship with the child if you didn't realize that what you were trying to teach them was actually a skill. Like an example is, I've seen this before, like you ask a child to compare and contrast, they may not know what those words mean, and they may not know how to do a Venn diagram. So if you give them the summative assessment at the end and it's to do a Venn diagram, they never learned how to do a Venn diagram. Those to me are the types of decisions, is understanding when you're teaching content versus a skill.
Awesome. And I think that unfortunately, what behavior analysts, particularly in education, have seen is that a lot of these good teacher behaviors, as you're describing, are not contingency shaped for a great number of teachers. So no, I don't want to script what to do for every single behavior throughout the day, but I also have to make sure that I have a way for teachers who may not have good teacher behavior to manage behaviors and make good decisions in the moment, right? The value, I've had this conversation, I've taught this class 3, 4, however many times, and I honestly this is a different direction that this conversation has taken today, and I love it. And we're the value on that high quality moment to moment decision and the impact that that has on the larger picture is huge. And we are the center of that. We're absolutely the center of that. I don't even remember what the original question that I asked you, Rianne, was that you answered. But you know, this concept of how do kids respond to a lack of high quality moment to moment decisions? That's where we see problems, right? That's the issue. It's not a kid misbehaving. It's not a kid not knowing or not being exactly. It's not them being anything other than I need help and you're not doing your job, right? We have to be aware. This week and next week for sure, this Max thing is gonna be on my mind. There's one teacher there who's having a ball with all of this, but she's like, you know, in my classroom, I have expectations. It's my way or the highway. And that's actually not true. She's very much, you know, making good decisions, but we do have teachers that have that policy, right? This is what you do. You come in my class, I'm not going to change. And they expressly choose not to respond to the data. And it's incumbent on the child to change their own behavior, while it is quite literally our job to aid children in changing their behaviors. We teach them new things. We teach them how to behave in new ways. So if we are going to say that I am not going to respond to you, I'm basically saying I'm not going to teach you. It is your job to learn what I say, but I am not going to teach you. I never thought about it that way. They shut down and think you don't care. Like that relationship between care and ability to make moment-to-moment decisions. And if you can't make moment-to-moment decisions because you don't know how, to learn how. That's teaching. That's teaching. It's not delivering content. It's adapting your behavior to meet the needs of your student. What was the question I asked you, Rianne? How did we get here? Anyone remember?
I don't know. I can't remember. Sorry.
Yeah, and I've told this before. I had a kid. So the comment is, even if your adjustment fails, students still see that you try. I had a kid where I delivered an antecedent and I got a blank stare, and I delivered it a new way, and she said, "I don't understand what you're saying." I delivered a third way, still don't get it. I delivered it a fourth way, and she said, "Why didn't you say that the first time?" Right? Like, I kept modifying my behavior until it clicked with her. And it wasn't just that she saw that I tried. She got so much out of it because she learned. And I stuck with her, right? And you guys do that too. We keep trying the tactics to keep everyone on point. I get so, I get frustrated when I go into classrooms where the taking of true moment-to-moment data is discouraged, whether it's because people think it's overburdensome, or they think that you're not teaching, or they think that it doesn't mean anything. I don't get that. The ability to have valid data that allows me to make a sound instructional decision is quite literally what determines our success on a day-to-day basis. We can't wait till a traditional assessment period. We are always evaluating. We are always finding ways to make meaningful decisions. I know what I was getting at. With self-contained clinical special education classrooms where we use a traditional decision protocol, 3 data path, 5 data path, that type of thing, there's a caveat to that we are allowed, we as trained teachers, as trained behavior analysts, have the ability to make verbally mediated decisions. If I am in a classroom and I see, if I ask one question, I get all wrong responses, and not just all wrong responses, but all wrong responses in the same way, I'm making a decision right there. I missed a prerequisite skill. I need to go fill something in. Similarly, if I'm not at a decision point, I have the ability to say, I need to fill something in. I'm missing a gap. I need to establish discrimination between these two items. I have to do something. Otherwise, the trajectory isn't going to change. Moment-to-moment decision-making allows us to get to meaningful decision points, get to meaningful assessment opportunities, traditional assessment opportunities. It allows us to get to meaningful decisions when it comes to authorization periods and IEPs and evaluations. Allison, yes, I'm frustrated now with our teachers because being told they have to teach curriculum and that's it. Instead of making more decisions, drive instruction based on our students' abilities or meeting them where they are. Everyone ends up frustrated. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I know you're preaching to the choir and you're in a safe place to say that, but like, I will never understand it. I just won't. Like, if a child doesn't know something, the only way they're going to learn it is if you teach it to them. It's that simple, right? I don't know what else there is to say. If they're missing a prerequisite skill, they're not going to learn the skill. And more importantly, they're going to misbehave because they don't want to be there. You know? And that is a culmination of missed opportunities, right? That is a culmination of missed moment-to-moment decisions that led to maybe invalid assessment decisions. Maybe you have that child that's getting a C, right? But what that C isn't what you think it is, right? There are two ways to get a 70%. You can either know 100% of the material to 70% accuracy. That's our Swiss cheese effect. Or you can know 70% of the material to 100% accuracy. And that's our mastery criterion. So maybe you had these missed decision opportunities that led to an assessment. You had a poor understanding of the assessment, which allowed them to move on. Then you have these missing prerequisite skills. You get to the next skill, the Swiss cheese hole gets larger, and someone says, well, they got here, so you got to teach them. But the hole goes straight through the block of cheese, and they have nothing to stand on. That's the type of stuff that we have to avoid. And in your situation, Allison, one sec, guys. That was Dr. G. Okay, Caitlin. Lost my train of thought. And it's gone. I got nothing. It was going to be a good take-home point, wasn't it?
You said something about a block of cheese.
I did. I know what I said there. But I have no idea where I was going next with that. I apologize. All right. Moment to moment decisions. They are what allow us to build the bigger picture. They are what allow us to get to a point where we can actually have a conversation about bigger assessment and bigger decisions and bigger pieces. But these are what tell us that we have done what we can do now here to get the child where they need to be. So I know where I was going, Rianne, with that it was the primacy of decision making. What I want you guys to be thinking about is before you even start instructing your students, whether it's behaviorally, academically, or program based, I want you to be thinking of how you are prepping yourself to make moment-to-moment decisions in a day. It's not no assignment associated with that, no discussion, no nothing. But I want you to be thinking about what are the tools that you use to make those types of decisions. And Rianne, what I think is so important about what you said is on its face, you're talking about a subjective decision. But there are data points behind that somewhere, somehow. And how do you access those? Okay? So that's what I want you guys to be thinking about. How and be using that thought process to help bring the components that are necessary for moment-to-moment decision making to your forefront. All right? Caitlin, you have a question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is completely off topic. It's just about one of our assignments.
Okay, let's hold off for 1 second, and then does anyone have any questions about moment-to-moment decision making or comments or want to chime in any way, shape, or form?
Okay, I'll just quickly share real quick. What comes to mind is several of my students, now mind you, we worked on these skills for the full academic year. So for students with behaviors. But anyway, long story short, the very last day of school, they found me and with big smiles on their faces, because what reminded me, Dr. Shaman, was that they earned C's in their courses versus the many F's we were trying to overcome throughout the year. But that was also due to prerequisite skills that we had to go back and learn and teach. But anyway, I appreciated this tonight, and it reminded me of real life experiences that I had this past year, in the classroom. So,
and I think that that's a great little anecdote, because think about that kid or those kids and the number of decisions that need to be made to bring someone from an F to a C. Like, that's a lot. And without these moment-to-moment decisions, you just don't have enough decision opportunities in a year to get there, right? Like traditional, you're not making decisions weekly or monthly based off of a weekly test or a unit test or something like that. You're making decisions daily, if not hourly. Right? So that's great. Good. All right. Any other thoughts?
don't know for sure if this is what you're talking about, but for me, like realizing that I actually do have the authority to change my instruction. I actually do have the authority to respond to the students in my classroom, and I have the ability to fight for that. Like, I don't have to just sit there and say, look at the curriculum in the computer and say, well, that's the curriculum. How I deliver it is my choice, and I have the authority in my room to make those decisions. For me, that's the most important thing that I've learned to help me to be a better moment-to-moment decision maker.
That's beautiful. And so many teachers right now, especially in this region, as the pendulum is swinging back, are scared straight of deviating, especially from a scripted curricula, that they are being told, basically do this or you're fired, right? And there is such a lack of understanding of what makes a scripted curricula effective. Of course, you still need to be you, the teacher, and make decisions. Not every single one of your children forever is going to respond to this. It's just, what? That's not how life works. And I don't know what administrators are. It's not even administrators. It's not. It's curriculum gurus that sit at central office. I should probably stop this recording. That make these decisions and don't understand what the data mean. Like, come on. Sorry.
I still don't believe that these people that write the curriculum, sometimes you don't know what's going on in their heads, but I don't think that they expect educators to sit there and read out of the book. I think that wasn't the intent. So I think empowering teachers to realize what those decisions actually look like versus making sure you're doing that and still teaching the curriculum. There's a balance. Like, you can't read out of the book, because I've seen teachers doing that. I have seen the same lesson with the teacher looking out of the book and then go see that very same lesson in another teacher's classroom, and she never looked out of the book, but the lesson was still the same. The delivery was very different, but they both taught the same curriculum.
And it's totally possible, especially with a scripted curriculum, to be effective while reading out of the book. But you have to be responsive to your students. Now, when I say read out of the book, I don't say the cat and the hat went to play. No, that's not what I'm talking about. You know, you still have to be an expressive teacher. But if you're walking around with the teacher's guide in your hand, making sure you're saying the right things, but you're still engaging students, you're still getting feedback, you're still getting data, and there is not a single scripted curriculum out there, I promise you, that does not allow for moment-to-moment decisions. But the teacher says, it says I have to read the thing, and then I move on, and then I say the next thing, and I ask this question. If a student's making a mistake, follow up. If a student has a good idea, follow up. Like, obviously that's not how it's made, but I don't, but.
I think in my district, teachers are feeling pressured that they can't make those decisions and they can't
Totally
do those things.
Absolutely. And I did a couple of years ago, I ended up with like 6 or 7 student teachers across the 2 semesters in St. Charles Parish. And St. Charles was one of the first parishes in the region to make a wholesale switch to scripted curricula. And what they were told was, this year, do it exactly by the book. Like, we just need to know. And then next year, we'll start to modify. And the teachers were like, I can't do anything. I can't do it. I literally can't do anything. If it doesn't say I can't say the. If it doesn't say I can't say. Like, they were scared out of their mind to deviate. And then the next year, they got a little looser, and then the district started cutting things. So like there are definitely situations where a district may say, hey, if nothing else, we need a baseline, right? And there's value to that, but you're going to lose a year. Like, it's just going to happen. That's kind of the best worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is the district that doesn't make that decision, that we're at a baseline now and we can start changing things, and it's year after year, boom, boom, boom. But you know, I would love to say, I bet if you went and talked to your administrator, I bet if you went and talked to central office, that they'd say this and they'd say that, but I don't have that confidence. I do think that some of these people strongly believe that we have to run the curriculum exactly as it's written. And Selena, I totally agree with you. That's not what the curriculum makers intended. That's not what teachers should be doing. And I think a hallmark of great teachers is to take content and make it meaningful to their students, whether it's scripted or unscripted or made off of teachers helping teachers or whatever. Our ability to make that meaningful through instructional strategies, through injection of ourselves, through moment-to-moment decision making, that's what we're being paid for. All right, I'm off my soapbox. Any other thoughts, closing thoughts? Great conversation. Really, really cool conversation. I like that. All right. Caitlin, what do you got? Are you still there? There you
Yes.
go.
It takes a second to unmute. I have two questions about two things that we have to submit this week.
Okay.
So one says good graph, bad graph.
Yeah.
What, can you clarify?
I sure can. I sure can. So for those where it's appropriate, good graph, bad graph can be a couple of different things. So a good graph typically, we're looking at a graph that demonstrates student learning. A bad graph is a graph where we are struggling to identify or make decisions, quality decisions for student learning. So a good graph can be, we had to put 4 tactics in, but we got there. A good graph can be, I put it in and it worked. So some demonstration of student learning that you're proud of. And I don't necessarily want to see child didn't know it, we put in learn units and they learned it. I like to see we implemented some tactics and we had to think about it and we got there, but it took some time and effort. That's a good graph to me. And bad graphs are graphs that you want feedback on, that you're not entirely sure what's going on and you might need a little bit of conversation about. Okay.
Do they have to be based on what we're implementing now with the LCAR, or can it just be with any program we're doing?
I would love it to be a part of what you're doing with the LCAR, but I also recognize that you may not have enough data to get to that point yet with those pieces. So it does not have to be by any stretch, but if you can, that would be great.
Okay. And then my second question is with the TPRAs.
Yes.
It says one with errors and one without. I don't mean this in like a big way, but I've been a tech for 2 years, and I can't tell you the last time I had a mistake on any like TPRA or eval or integrity check or anything like that.
So that's, I've had a few conversations at different places in the last couple of weeks about that exact thing. And I will go so far as to say that you're not being observed in a way that is commensurate with where you are.
Mm-hmm.
If my department head comes in and observes a lesson for me, she's going to find something to give me feedback on.
Yeah.
Right. I would say to whoever is observing you or giving you that TPRA, find an error.
Okay.
find something that you can give me that feedback on. Okay.
Okay.
And even if it's not like check circle, you did this wrong, it can be constructive feedback in any way, shape, or form. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Cece, I owe you a document. It wasn't on my home computer where I thought it was, so I'm going to look on this computer. Allison and Selena, I owe you guys conversations. I'm sorry, that was totally like getting this Max thing off the ground totally consumed me for the entirety of last week. I should. Are you guys free tomorrow afternoon? Individually, I'll send you emails, but like in the next couple of days, we'll meet. Okay.
Can we meet as well?
Yes. Sorry, Isaac.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Have a good one. I will. So yeah, next week, this time, we'll be all good. Okay. All right. Have a good one, guys.